Today, we'll be talking on improving communication speed as part of the leadership series. Where there are people, there will be always conflict. That's the human nature, and this is the way of life. It is important to understand that conflict is healthy when managed properly. So the idea behind this module is introducing you the ideas between the difference between healthy conflict and unhealthy conflict. We saw you how to use healthy conflict to improve creativity and innovation while using your awareness to avoid negative consequences of unhealthy conflict. In this video, we are going to learn about why it is so important for team and organization to rapidly communicate with each other. The simple idea answer is that the faster you can respond to change, the faster you can avoid danger or seize opportunities. That's obviously very valuable because in today's world, which is rapidly changing and highly uncertain, and when we cannot predict what is going to happen, the ability to move faster means that we can avoid big dangers that we didn't expect or seize opportunities faster than our competitors and our peers. If we look to the past, we can see how improvements in information technology, in other words, improvements in the speed of communication completely transformed the world. The telegraph was one of the first inventions to really make that possible. The telegraph made it possible to instantly send information across continental distances, whereas before it would take you weeks or months to send a letter from one place to another. Now you could do it in an instant. This in transformed all aspects of human life from government, diplomacy, military aspects to trade and finance. It started to build the global world that would know and so well. Today, the key to understanding communication technology is that you need to have the right infrastructure in place to make it happen. The telegraph needed electric cables and the poles. Today mobile phones need masts and antennas. Our nervous system needs an infrastructure of neural networks, and the modern internet needs fiber optics cables. The point is that you always need to way to make sure information flows rapidly between two or more points by having the infrastructure in place. Why is that so important? Because the better your infrastructure, the faster your speed and the quantity of information that can be transmitted. For example, today's fiber optics cables are what power broadband internet, whereas before if you would around in the 90s, you know that you had to wait for your dial-up modems to dial into the internet, which was a whole different experience, certainly a much slower one. Because the faster you get the information, the faster you can respond. You are always looking for ways to improve the speed at which information flows. For example, imagine you are sitting down and you have a cup of water in front of you. You look at it and you decide to drink the cup of water. Instantly, your arms move forward and you drink. We take this for granted, but it happens because message travels from our brain to our to muscles in the arms, and there is a continuous information loop that guides our arms to pick that up and guides it towards our mouth successfully. That's easy to understand. Now imagine that same situation of picking up the cup, but that it took 5 seconds for the message from your brain to reach your arm. Now let's see what will happen. You decide to drink, but the for 5 seconds nothing happens. Then suddenly your arm starts to move. But remember, because it took you 5 seconds for the message to travel from your brain to your arm, it also takes 5 seconds for the message to travel from your arm back to your brain again. So the total cycle time is 10 seconds. So that means you need to wait for 10 seconds to understand how your arm is moving. To give you an example of how frustrating that would be, imagine this drink and now your arm moves. Obviously, it would be very difficult to drink because there is such a long cycle time between your thoughts and your actions, and that is really problematic, and it is also very frustrating. So don't worry, I don't do that again. Now imagine that you are trying to drink a cup of water and talk to your friend and eat your friend and eat your food. Don't eat your friend. So you are doing all that, but each one of those activities has 10 seconds within it. Can you imagine how frustrating it would be? It would be completely mess of the situation. But what can recognize now is that the mess is being caused by the delay in the travel time, because it takes so long for the messages to travel from your brain to your mouth to your arms. And so in a similar sense, if it takes long for information to travel from one part of to other part, it is going to be much harder for that organization to respond to change. The solution, therefore, is to maximize the speed of masses, to maximize your ability to respond to it, and that's one of the reason why we have nervous system that use electric and chemical energy to transmit information, because there is a very fast way of transmitting information. So the key point here is that better information infrastructure enables faster information flow. So let's slow it down and understand what exactly do we mean by that. Well, networks exist to facilitate the flow of materials, and there are different kind of networks, and each different kind of networks has different kind of infrastructure. So, for example, the internet is powered through the technological infrastructure. We have to build fiber optics cables, we have to build big processing units, we have to build server farms, and this kind of stuff need to be in place. And the faster we can build that technology, the faster that information can flow in the internet. We obviously want to watch our cat videos at high speed in HD, and so therefore the internet must be built around fiber optic technology. However, in a biological system, in other words, for example, in your brain, we have a different systems, which is the nervous system, and through there are similarities, the information infrastructure is different. So what is impressive about biological system is the incredible speed at which it operates. From our thoughts to actions taking place, it basically feels instantaneous. And that's because the nervous system that we have within our bodies has evolved to be able to transmit information as quickly as possible, so that we avoid frustrating water drinking experiences like mentioned earlier, but also to avoid life-threatening situations such as being hunted by predators, so one and so forth. So the thing that unites the technical and biological system is that they have physical infrastructure. We can see the nerves indents, and we can see the fiber optics cables in the ground. But in social networks, that the infrastructure is invisible. It actually exists in the form of human relationships. So whereas we could see the information flowing down the cable in the technical and biological systems, in social systems, in other words, in relationships between the people, we cannot actually see the cable. We are not walking around, obviously, with the cables connected between us and everyone else. That would be a little bit impractical. And so, what we have instead is an abstract idea, which is the social network, and that's one of the real pioneering breakthrough of the 21st century has been the idea of social, because what we are essentially doing is mapping something that is already existed, which are social relationships, and which have obviously been around for 10 thousands of years, but we are actually being able to replicate them in the digital world. And that that's one of the reasons why Facebook is so popular. Now, the important thing to recognize between these three networks is what happens if you cut connections. So, if you cut connections in your body, that results in paralysis. Information can no longer flow, right? So, if you cut the nerves in your legs or in your back, that means you can be paralyzed for the rest of your life. What's important to recognize is that the leg is still there. The capacity to operate is still there, but what is missing is the information pipeline to carry the message from your brain to the right muscles. And so, in the same way, in the internet, if someone cuts your internet connection cable, that's it. You have no more connections, even though you have the router in place and the internet is still in place. You are not connected anymore, and that's where we can see how important it is for the connections to be maintained and to be upgraded and protected so that information can flow. The same also applies to the social system. If we break connections between the people's, information won't flow. And as we are going to discover in this video, that becomes a really big problem. So to summarize what we have been covering so far, the faster the information flows, the faster the team can respond to change. And we have looked at the importance of having right infrastructure in place to make sure we maximize information flow. And finally, what we have learned in that in teams, information flows through social connections, not physical architecture. So, what do you need to do? How can we understand and translate that into practical way of addressing the information challenges in your team? Well, the point to recognize is that social relationships act as connection between people and groups. They allow information to flow between peoples. You basically have a relationship with someone. Doesn't mean that you have to be the boyfriend girlfriend. By relationship, I mean you just have a social relationship, and because of that, you are willing to transmit information with the team. Now, the greater the quality of relationship, usually the greater the levels of the trust and that in the relationship, the more information you are willing to share. You are going to share a lot of private and important information with someone you have never met before, but someone who is been long time friend. You are much more likely to trust them and share that information. So this is really important thing to recognize about social infrastructure. The better the quality of relationship, the better the quality of speed of information flow, because that takes us to the second point. If you do not like somebody, you are not going to go out of your way to tell them important information, or even worse, you might withhold information from them because you do not like them and you do not want them to know about things that might be beneficial for them. This is something that we see every day in the workplace, and this is where politics come into, because people don't like each other or you want to take revenge on each other and all kind of political missions. We can see that the social system starts to break down and slow down because information is not traveling perfectly due to imperfect relationships, and that has been mapped out in front of you. You can see the six circles that and that with the title U and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we are basically done. There is a mapped out what the potential relationships are between these individuals. So this is a hypothetical team with you as the team leader and the five other teammates, and the different drawings represent different quality of connections between the individuals. Green rectangle represents a fast connection. Now, what that means in reality is that you have a good relationship with the individuals. So there is high level of trust and openness. So in that kind of relationships, you are very likely to share important information with each other quickly. Orange means that you have the reasonable level of information. You are not going to make that much effort for somebody and you are not going to share that much information with them. And then finally, in the red relationships indicates that where there is going to be slow information flow. So why does this matters? It matters because if you want to build a team that can respond very quickly for change, you are going to need a team that has at least all orange and ideally all the green working relationships, because that's the way in which information is going to move quickly between your teammates in order to enable them to respond quickly to change. If you are leading teams in which everybody hates each other, then nobody is going to share that information, and it is going to take so much more time to respond to change because information is moving much more slowly in your team. So the basic point is that you need to engineer your team in such a way that you build a good quality working relationship between people. Now, an important caveat here is to recognize that you do not need everyone to be the best friends. You are not asking that you what you are focusing on is building effective working relationship in which there is enough trust for information to be shared quickly so that it can be rapidly responded to. So, what do you need to do? Well, the first step is you need to create what is called the social capital map, and that is the diagram you saw in the previous page. The social capital map basically describes the social relationships between the people. So get a piece of paper, write your name down, and write the key people that you work with, and draw the relationship between these people. Use red for the bad relationships, orange for the good, and good for excellent. And what you need to focus on is that professional levels of trust. Are people willing to communicate with each other and share information? Second step is to work on eliminating the bad relationships. The most important thing is to turn red to the orange first, because red can be poisonous to the movement of the information in your team. And then once you have got that done, focus on moving from orange to green. Key relationships really should be green. The key people that you are working with, you should have a good working relationships in which information can move quickly. Now, that doesn't mean that you guys have to be best friends. Of course, that is not always possible in reality, but what is possible is that you can respect each other and share the information that you need to get the things done quickly and effectively. And the third step is to recognize that these things can be forced. You cannot just build a cable between people and tell them to start communicating with each other. Human relationships takes space and time to be built. And what's really important is the level of authenticity in the relationship. People are very sensitive about who they trust and what information they will share with who. And you need to provide the space and time for your people and your team to build a positive working relationship so that they will share their levels of trust and information that they need for you to create an agile team. So in summary, high trust, high quality relationships networks allows fast information flow, resulting in agile and highly coordinated team. If you want to have a team that can respond quickly to change, you need to invest in building social infrastructure, which basically means building great social relationships between the people in your team. The first final point to emphasize here is that as a 21st century leader, the speed of information flow in your team is crucial. Here we can see an important difference between 21st century leadership and management, because the manager typically won't pay that much attention to the social relationships and the people of their team. They are more interested in the process themselves, where 21st century leaders recognize that information flow is crucial and that they need to invest time in building proper social architecture and infrastructure. In other words, building good social relationships between team members so that they can have the agile and high performing team that they need to be to succeed in the modern day world.